Thank you, Member Bailey. All right, members, just some housekeeping. The next week, the committee will not be meeting next week. The following week, as per the discussions we had previously, we have invited the Ministry of Tourism. It is our intention to finish the year. Either we'll finish tourism on that sitting, or if we need another sitting, but it's the intention that we would not have any further sittings after that. After tourism. No, well, I wouldn't say, no, we're not meeting next week. We'll meet the following week, which is the 13th. And we'll meet with them. Depending on the outcome of that meeting, we'll determine whether we need another meeting on the 20th, but we'll not go much further than that unless anything else is referred to us from the Parliament. On the agenda, the next item is the Ministry of National Security, but we have, over a period of time, had a number of meetings with National Security. So what I would suggest to members is I've asked the consultant, we have a list of all the ministries, and there were some suggestions, and at the next meeting we'll make a proposal as to how we will start the new year and what ministries we will start with in the coming year when we reconvene after the Christmas recess. All right? Yes.
I would just like to find out from you and the committee in terms of how far we reach in terms of getting answers to questions that were posed, and because we are going to finish the year, and I would have expected that we'd have accomplished a couple of things that we have set out to do. Can you tell me whether or not we are going to do an overview to see exactly what we have accomplished so far?
In terms of, I'm not following you in terms of the overview, member. I'm not following you. Yes, you're saying, are we talking about the outstanding matters? The clerk indicates that there are no requests that have been made that are outstanding. All the requests, as a matter of fact, the only one we had outstanding is a question we had asked of the Ministry of National Security, and we got a letter from Warren Clark, the Assistant Commissioner, which to deal with the Technical Services Division. Remember, there was a question, I posed a question about the problems with the Orange Street office. Sorry, with the Duke Street office for persons who are trying to get criminal records. I'll briefly mention this in a second, but that is the only question outstanding. And in terms of reports, week before last Tuesday, I took last week Tuesday, I took all the reports on the order paper in Parliament. So as such, the committee is up to date in all of its deliberations, reports, minutes, everything, and in terms of questions. So other than if there are any questions posed now, yeah, yes. No, go ahead if you had some other. Okay. All right. As I indicated, members, just for committee, we had asked a question about the difficulties persons were having at the office in getting criminal records. It was something in the media. We've gotten a letter from Assistant Commissioner Warren Clark, and he indicates here that on October the 4th, 2019, the Office of the Jamaica Constabulary Force Technical Services Division was temporarily relocated to Shop 68 on Orange Street, Kingston, due to an emergency associated with the 34 Duke Street, where the facility was previously housed. The Criminal Records Office is a subunit of the Technical Services Division. Shop 68 is a contingent location and requires repairs and renovation simultaneously with the return of the unit to public service. The Jamaica Constabulary Force and the KSAC Health Department have been working in partnership in making the building safe for the public and staff, and decided that limited service would be returned to the community while a gradual improvement in the environment is achieved. Whereas partial service has been restored, infrastructural work continues to improve the service environment for both public and staff in the national interest. So this is a letter from the Jamaica Constabulary Force. I don't think that this necessarily requires any further follow-up. Yes.
Clarification. I heard you say that we will not take any other matters this side of Christmas unless, any new matter that is, unless it is referred to us by the Parliament.
Well, in the last 2 years, well, certainly last year, or year before, we have from time to time been asked to take the supplementary budgets or thereabouts. So one never knows what is going to happen. But I do not necessarily, when we take ministries as a whole, normally it takes more than one sitting. I don't want us to take 2 sittings in tourism, for example, and then we end up bringing another ministry and we either have to cut it in 2, do half before the break and half after. I'm just saying, I think for tidiness, unless you necessarily want me to put something else on the other paper, I would necessarily just take
Chairman, where my concern lies is there are 2 upper sections in the provision which allows us to do our work. But we seem to focus almost exclusively on the third of those obligations, and we seem to be leaving behind those 2 obligations to interrogate the budget allocations and to see whether or not the agencies, ministries or whatever, are really carrying out and achieving the mandate which is set during the budget year. And I think perhaps we ought to take a little more time to examine those allocations. Whilst it is good to look at administration, in looking at the data, I don't see that our recommendations over the years have influenced the Parliament in changing the course of doing what they have been doing. So perhaps we ought to change our approach. That's where I'm suggesting that we shift the focus slightly and give a little more
attention to, I'm not certain, attention to what area?
Well, the principal objective as set out in the standing order is for us to look at the allocation and to see how effectively these agencies, ministries are carrying out their mandate. But we seem to have gone to the administrative side, making recommendations in relation to the administration, and we're leaving out those 2 obligations. If I may just very quickly,
Yeah, Member Campbell, just to say to you, I think the wording of it, because we've gone through it. No, what I was really asking you is the sort of a practical example. I think we know the wording, but for example, or if you could give us an example of what specifically you would be talking, because I think
Oh, let's take
that the
a very topical one. Let's take a very topical one. There's an allocation of $752 million to RADA.
Yes.
Have we dug into, because we're talking about these funds have been available to RADA since the 1st of April.
Yes.
What is it that RADA has done with that $752 million? From the 1st of April, and we're into November, what have they done in order to execute
the mandate that was given to them?
given to them?
But I think that we don't disagree on the direction. For example, today, one of the reasons that we're meeting with like the cannabis licensing authorities for that very reason, to see where they're at. They're given a mandate, just to be clear in our minds, that what we expect them to deliver, they are delivering, and the timeliness of it. So I don't think that we're far off.
Very well, sir.
All right. So members, with that, we have apologies for Member Terrelong. Any other apologies? The minutes of the meeting held on October the 23rd were circulated. Any corrections? If not, can someone move for the confirmation? Member Dunn, seconded by Member Phillips. Any matters arising? If not, I will ask let us invite the representatives from the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. Members, I would indicate that we'll be taking the Ministry of Tourism not next week but the week after. And if members have any specific requests for information, please direct those to the clerk so that we'll have the ministries have into who? Going to who? Yes, no, just for information, so that into the clerk, so that we can get written reports and that the questions are, the ministry officials have them beforehand. It's better than when we get there and we ask and then we have to bring them back to get the same questions. Mr. Spence, yes, yes, yes. Tell them don't put as much condensed milk. All right, members, we have before us today the representatives from the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries who are returning to us. They were here with us, what was it, 3 weeks ago? And we have asked them to return. There are a number of things that we want to look at. We have joining us from the ministry, specifically the Cannabis Licensing Authority, the Agri-Invest Corporation, Rural Agricultural Development Authority, and SCJ Holdings Limited. Is that right, PS? Those are the four that are here. And we are going to start today by continuing the discussions on the Cannabis Licensing Authority, and then after that we'll move to the other departments. But we had started the discussions, as I said earlier this year, and I had asked for some additional research to be done to come back to us so we could see exactly where we are with it. For the records, I want to welcome to the Parliament. We have two representatives from the Westmoreland Hemp and Ganja Farmers Association, the president or the chairman, Mr. Delroy Johnson, and Mr. Eaton Owens. They both come from a very good parish, and so I'd have you welcome them to Westmoreland. You know, you know, thank you. You know, we have something in common. Yes, so I would like to welcome them to Parliament. Welcome, gentlemen. Mr. Spence, the Permanent Secretary, is here. I'm going to turn it over to you, but as I said in the last meeting, there are a number of things that I think we need to be comfortable with. In 2014, it was 2014, I think that, was it 2014 or 15 that the legislation was finally passed? 2015. And at that point, we were ahead of the curve. We were in a position where we were one of the first countries to sort of make this groundbreaking legislation. However, there's a general feeling now amongst persons that what is happening is that we're sort of falling behind as many other countries are moving forward, doing the legislation, doing it even more comprehensively, and moving at a quicker pace to develop their industry. This is an industry that many feel can give great economic potential to many Jamaicans. It's something that Jamaica has a competitive advantage in, and we just want to be certain that we are going in the right direction and with the speed that it needs to take place in. There are a couple things that we had asked specifically last time. Number one, as part of the government's thrust, it had approved two, I think they're called alternative development areas, am I correct? And we had asked for a report on how those were going. I for one, in Westmoreland, specifically in the Orange Hill area, which got one, we found that we were almost at a dead halt. And I'd asked or urged the ministry to move ahead and push on it. Subsequent to that, a lot of contact have been made with us. I don't know where we are today. I'm hoping we get a report on it, but I think we need to get a report on how these alternative development areas are proceeding. Secondly, the regulation. Some members had indicated some concerns with the regulations, and that if we make the regulations and the fees too high, you're going to exclude a section of the society. And the reality is that many persons have grown cannabis for years. Many of them are small farmers. What we did not want to happen is that you end up with an industry where you have one or two large farmers, and then all those persons would be disenfranchised and left out of their slice of the pie. So there's a reality that we want to ensure that the licensing authority and the ministry, who have the policy, to have to take the policy initiative, are moving towards that end. And of course, the third thing that I'd put is that there's a grave concern in the industry that it's not going to get very far if we're not able to do something about the banking regulations that are in place. And because to build an industry like this, you must have investment. And at every level, how our banking regulations are, they impede any sort of movement of resources once you hear that it is to do with marijuana, cannabis, whatever it is. So it's going to take a lobby. And from our perspective here in Parliament, we had made the point that we want to ensure that the ministry and the authority understand that a serious lobby has to take place on behalf of this industry, or else we will be left behind. And we just wanted to know who was taking the initiative. Was it the ministry? Does the Cannabis Licensing Authority see itself as one that is to build an industry, or is it simply to regulate an industry? So these were some of the questions that we had asked. You had gone to get some further information. So, PS, I would turn it over to you and to the team at the authority, and we can start there today and see if we can go through some of those questions and turn it over to our members. Over to you, PS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just permit me just a minute to introduce the team. In addition to the persons, the agencies mentioned, we also have a National Irrigation Commission. But specifically, I want to express our appreciation at being able to provide further update to you and other parliamentarians at the PAC here. And so we are going to try our best to respond to the questions that will be posed today and to update you according to the specific questions that were asked for follow-up action at the last meeting. From the ministry itself, we have with us Mr. Delroy Coley, Senior Director for Strategic Planning. Mr. Coley, you can just indicate so that you can recognize. Ms. Monique Gibbs, Chief Technical Director in the Industry and Commerce section. Ms. Sophia Wellington, Senior Director for Industry Division, and she's also the chairman of the committee that deals with the AD program. That's the Alternative Development Program. So she will provide a lot of information today accordingly. I have with us also Ms. Tanisha Garvey, our Director of Accounts and Payables. The agencies that are with us, the RADA, headed by Mr. Peter Thompson, Mr. Edward Gaynor, the Director of Finance, is with him, and Mr. Colin Henry is also here, as well as Mr. Pendergrass. And Mr. Pendergrass is the engineer responsible for the roads. The National Irrigation Commission, we have with us Mr. Joseph Giles, the Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Edgar Watson, Director of Finance. The Agro-Invest Corporation, we have with us Dr. Alexander Powell, the CEO, and Ms. Katie Ann Rambali, along with Mr. Scarlett, who is the Director of Agri-Parks, Ms. Rambali being the Chief Financial Officer. The Cannabis Licensing Authority is well represented. We have Mrs. Hyacinth Lightburn, the chairperson for the authority. You are to raise your hands as I...
I think you're all thinking it was another Hyacinth Lightburn.
We also have Mr. Lincoln Allen, the CEO, Mr. Michael Boyd, Director of Finance and Accounting, Mr. Sheldon Reed, Legal Officer, and the lawyers were specifically asked for here this morning. So we also have Mrs. Yvette Reed, the Legal Officer from MICAF. We also have Ms. Faith Graham, the enforcement from the Enforcement Office. For the Sugar Corporation of Jamaica Holdings Limited, we have Mr. Joseph Shakir, Managing Director, and we have Mr. Vivian Brown, the Chief Executive Officer. I hope that represents everybody adequately covered. I had some opening remarks, but I won't delay us because we understand that we are to be focusing on the specific questions, and the specific questions that were raised regarding the CLA is the role and function of the CLA as a regulator, actions being taken to develop the sector, which is a broader question, initiatives being undertaken to assist especially small farmers, as well as update in terms of the banking regulations, which remains a sticking point for the entire industry. And we are prepared to respond to these. So I don't know if Mr. Chairman, you want us to hold here or to proceed.
Just from an overview, I think it would be important for you to just say to us, this industry that is now being developed, who takes the initiative to develop the industry? Is it the ministry or is it the licensing authority? And the licensing authority, is that its main role, simply to license, or is its role to be proactive, to regulate, proper word. Is its job to regulate the industry, or is its job to assist in the promotion to ensure that Jamaica sort of gets the benefits of this industry? So,
yes, it is the ministry that is responsible for leading development of the industry. The CLA is essentially the regulator, but within the context of their mandate, there is room for strategic support to the development of the industry by way of public education, by way of promulgation, by way of review to facilitate, because everything is in a fledgling nature. And we have to be very dynamic and keep reviewing the way how we operate and support as things change. And so the ministry is constantly in dialogue with the CLA as the feedback comes in from stakeholders in order to review. They have been very, very creative and supportive and very precise in coming up with initiatives. So some of the initiatives that we'll outline today indicate that although they are the chief regulator, they too have been initiating strategies to assist the process and to make it easier, if you will, or more accessible, at the same time being compliant. But it is the ministry that is supposed to drive the overall development of the industry, and we'll indicate as we get into the details some of the initiatives that are being executed in order to facilitate that, which we have to do with a clear picture and a clear understanding of the regulations and the legal framework that govern this very sensitive area.
Okay, so we can go ahead with sorry, member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. as you would be well aware by the House, that I am the person who moved the motion as it relates to the small farmers, cannabis farmers, to be taken care of under the new program. But Mr. Chairman, I have some questions, but the one that is more pointing is that I'm reading through the document that is presented to us. And it says on page 8, number 3, rather we'll roll out a the trainer program by offering training for its extension officers to improve technical capacity in cannabis production and cannabis cultivation in anticipation of amended of the Agricultural Produce Act. Extension officers will begin to gather data on small cannabis farmers to ascertain the level of support needed. This is with a view to provide the training required for cultivation of standard. Mr. Chairman, I am of the opinion that the reason why Jamaica is now on the map per se as it regards to this situation is not because the soil is more fertile than any other Caribbean country or any other American country, but simply because for decades, going back as far as the 1960s, our Jamaicans, have been championing the art of cultivating this said crop. The support that I want for them, Mr. Chairman, is not to tell them how to plant it. They know very well how to plant it already. They have been bending backs. They have been climbing mountains. Not to mention running away from police, sleeping, having sleepless night out in the cold, trying to make this product what it is today, that others can see it as a cash cow, so to speak, Mr. Chairman. And it is my feeling that they, the small farmers, the people like Rasta and Israel, who live out in Farm Pen in Westmoreland, who has been going to jail ever since he was a boy because he believed in ganja, he believed in cannabis. I want Billy, who used to work at Beach Village. You know Beach Village, Mr. Chairman, way back in the 70s, 80s, who lost his job because he was trying to plant a little weed to help to supplement his family, and went to jail, and he was never able to get back a job in the formal sector because he has a police record, Mr. Chairman. These are the people that we are here championing the cause for, you know. And I realize that the same people who back then fight tooth and nail to send the little man to prison are the same one that I'm seeing today that is taking up everything, Mr. Chairman, to benefit from the ganja cannabis / cannabis. And the little man who make it into what it is today is going to be left out, Mr. Chairman. It cannot be. It cannot be. And we are opening the debate next week, God's willing. And it is my intention, Mr. Chairman, to go to the very end with this, because I believe, and it is the belief of many of my colleagues, and I know you share dearly my sentiments, being the Member of Parliament for that section of Westmoreland that we depend heavily back then. Not illegal stuff, but stuff that could not be spoken of then. So, Mr. Chairman, I am saying to us, I want the ministry to work with the small farmers. Them know how to plant it already. Provide them with the amenities, the fertilizers, the tools, because they are small farmers, you know. They're not looking to plant 5 acres, you know. They don't have it to plant 5 acres. All they want is to plant is a square. May you understand when a man plant a square what it look like? You understand me? So we must create something. We must have something within. And if it means that rather must champion the cause of creating a waiver system for those small farmers, Mr. Chairman, then that is what we are asking them to do.
All right. Member, spoken like a true Westmalite. And as your member of parliament, but I think all of us enjoying ourselves to those words. Members, let me make a suggestion. P.S. There were some specific things asked that would enlighten us. I'm wondering if we could just go through. You had made the point. There are 4 major issues that we want. Could you just carry us through them, and then now we can ask specific questions and really try and pull it apart. So over to you, PS. Too.
I'll start with reference to the same document that was mentioned and draw committee members' attention to page 2, which is a table of contents, and follow thereafter to page 5, which attends to one of the questions. And the heading there is actions being taken to develop the sector. Just for sequence, I'll proceed in that manner. The following, if we get to the opening for numbers 1, 2, and 3, gives further details on key action taken to date to encourage the growth and development of the industry. And specifically, we are saying that to help position the local cannabis within the global industry, Jamaica is embarking on a plan to join, places like Singapore, Dubai, and this kind of areas as the 4th global logistics node with its logistic hub. An impending promulgation of the import-export regulations for cannabis. This is the action that is being executed. The import-export regulations for cannabis. This will give the CLA oversight for the import, export, transit, and transshipment of cannabis, ganja and hemp in bracket, and its extracts. When passed, Jamaica will be one of only 10 countries in the world with an export regime for cannabis. Branding and marketing of Jamaican cannabis will therefore be very important to secure the niche in international trade. That is one action that is being taken to develop the sector. Another action, the development and promulgation of a policy and regulation for hemp that will be addressing what is considered some inherent risk in growing both hemp and ganja in terms of cross-pollination. And I know that the focus here is on ganja, cannabis, so to speak, but there are people that want to operate within this space in terms of hemp. This framework will allow the industry to take advantage of emerging opportunities for cannabidiol. The third action, as part of our efforts to develop a national quality infrastructure for the industry, the Bureau of Standards is at an advanced stage in finalizing quality standards for cannabis packaging, labeling, handling, processing, and cultivation to further enable international market access. Now, the matter of cultivation, as based on the comments that were made, remains a question mark. People want to say that people know how to cultivate it locally, but in order to participate in international space, we have to be clear that we are cultivating according to standards. And so the whole matter of trying to engage rather and push rather forward in working with the farmers out there within the context of the plant itself being recognized as as a plant, well, not as a plant, as one of the deregulated crop, will allow rather to be able to work with the farmers, and therefore when it comes on to explaining how you handle, process, grow and distribute, it becomes, you know, the proper thing to do. The industry will also require standards for good agriculture practices, good manufacturing practices, good security practices and good distribution practices. These standards will ensure safety, consistency, quality that will guarantee that business are internationally competitive and sustainable. Those are three of the things. With respect to the Bureau of Standards, Mr. Chairman, they have indicated that the standards for labeling and packaging will be ready by the end of December 2019. And we will launch these in January 2020. So the draft standards are currently available for public access on the BSJ website. The fourth point, Mr. Chairman, in relationship to actions being taken to develop the sector, the Alternative Development Program, and it was mentioned here, adopted and adapted, the principle being to enable the farmers to transition from the illicit to the licit. And technically, it is also a program that facilitates, if people want to move away from cannabis production into other crops too. That's what the program is about. But we are currently in Jamaica focusing on moving people from the illicit into the legal space. Now, the program is built with a community-based approach. And we don't need to perhaps spend much time to elaborate on that because we are quite familiar based on conversation, but that's also one of the actions. The fifth action that I want to highlight, Mr. Chairman, the CLA is developing a new facility, and this is very creative. Is one of the things that I mentioned in terms of the CLA pushing, appreciating the feedback from stakeholders, developing a new facility for the issuance of what is called transitional permits. If there's need for a question, we can elaborate here. But this is to small individual cannabis farmers. It goes right to the heart of the concern that is expressed by a member of this committee. This will be a major development as it will allow the individual to participate in the industry, provided they have identified a downstream buyer. Because it's a closed loop system, we always have to have a downstream buyer. The option provides an incentive for the individual grower to become authorized participants in the industry, separate and apart from qualifying for a license. In addition, the current regime allows individual cultivators, subject to evaluation of their circumstances, to benefit from a waiver or deferment of applicable fees. So this is a game changer, and this is coming straight out of the CLA. So I don't know if there's any question on that, but I will continue with point 6. As a matter of priority, MICAF is working closely with the Ministry of Justice to finalize import-export regulation for the industry. When this is in place, the CLA will be equipped to process permits for licensees who are interested in exporting to the international market. And this represents a crucial step in driving the industry forward. The 7th point, the current legislative framework provides for the expungement of cannabis-related criminal records. Having a criminal record for possession of small quantities of cannabis serves as a major inhibiting factor for potential players, especially small farmers, to participate in the license regime and legitimize their business. Potential participants are encouraged to take advantage of this provision. Notably, the CLA has applied this provision in the rollout of the AD program, whereas the criminal records of the individual farmers in the community groups under the pilot project have not been taken into account. The other point, Mr. Chairman, amendment of the Agriculture Produce Act is an important activity that is being pursued. Among other things, it recognized cannabis sativa as an agricultural crop. Through this recognition, the ministry will better be able to target resources, as indicated here and as requested, target resources to assist with the cultivation of the crop to internationally recognized standards. The ministry is facilitating discussion. Also, this is another major development with the Harvard International Phytomedicine and Cannabis Institute towards the establishment of a Jamaica Phytomedicine Institute. A team from Harvard visited. They were engaged in an international tour, informational tour of Jamaica during September 2019. The Harvard team viewed plant-based research being undertaken locally and had discussions with the University of the West Indies, University of Technology, Northern Caribbean University, Scientific Research Council, and Medicanja Limited. The goal of the engagement is to provide an avenue through which plant-based medicine research can be bolstered locally and create high-impact products, including cannabis-derived applications for commercialization. I will stop here, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I have members Jackson, Campbell, Dunn, and Stewart. I didn't see you, Dalrymple and Daly. Just some clarity before I turn it over. The 2015, the changes were made. The Cannabis Licensing Authority came up and running when? 2016. And we're now in 2019, so we're 3 years later. How many ganja farms do we have in Jamaica now? No. Active farmers. How many farms? Could we go and visit a legal farm? Well, no, I said legal. How many farms do we have?
Mr. Chairman, we perhaps would be able to respond to the question in the context of license holders and licensees rather than farms.
The authority wouldn't know if there are any active farms, no?
Yes, the farms that we are able to speak of would be under the AD program.
No, just a point. There's a reason I'm asking.
Oh. Well, you know, Mr. Chairman,
are there any active farms now? I heard yes. Well, somebody must know. They have a big team. No, but all right. So the AD program. Well, licensing authority.
All right. May I just respond? Space.
Absolutely.
You're speaking of just cultivators, sir?
Yes.
We have approximately 30 operational cultivators.
And these
licensed cultivators.
Yeah, but
actively cultivating.
Actively, and what size are these?
Varied sizes, sir. We have different tiers of the cultivation sites. Tiers 1, 2, and 3, ranging from less than an acre up to 5 acres and over 5 acres.
Right. So you would have an idea of how much cannabis is being cultivated now per year under this program. Under your program here, about how much cannabis is being, how much?
We calculated for yes we do, sir, for the International Narcotics Control Board. I don't have the number now.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat?
No, we do keep those statistics because we do have to report to the International Narcotics Control Board. I don't have the number with me, but I can get it during this meeting.
It would be useful for us to know the extent to which this program is actually.
But this is just our general licenses, this is not specific to the AD program. This is generally amongst our licensees.
But no, let me tell you, we're going to go through one of the difficulties we have, and let's be clear. You see, with due respect, ministries and government agencies, they give you these reports, they sound real good, but at the end of the day, you might find that we really are producing nothing substantial. So the question from our perspective, what Member Clark wants to know is how much small farmers are benefiting, how extensive is the program, what assistance are they getting. We want to know in a real practical manner, because what you have here is some nice words and so forth, but I am telling you that out there in Westmoreland, the big argument is that they're not feeling it at all. So that's what I'm just saying. I'm happy to hear that, but this is the feeling on the road. And I may be wrong, but my colleagues are here. So I want us to be clear that we want to really see whether this is in fact something that is successful or not.
Just on that point, to assist on that point, the Alternative Development Program, which is from the introduction, is to help to transition existing ganja farmers into either legalized ganja growing activity or alternative economic activity. From the document, there are 2 pilot projects which are going on simultaneously. In setting out to do this program, was there any survey done to identify the scope of the activity out there? Because you can't develop a pilot program for something unless you know what you're going to solve. What is the population size of that set of farmers that you want to bring in? So from your preliminary work with the ADP program, what would be the answer to the chairman's question in terms of the number of farmers that are not licensed farmer as the 30 that was given, but persons who are actively involved in farming marijuana?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just give a little bit of historical background how the AD program came about. When the regulations were brought on stream in the middle of 2016, I in effect did a roadshow around the country and visited 13 of the 14 parishes. The 14th was due to scheduling conflicts. We held town hall meetings in all of those parishes and invited all of the stakeholders. It was open to anybody in order to not only explain the regulations to the public, but also to give the public the idea to voice their concerns, thoughts, etc. to us. Based off of that roadshow, if you would, we compiled a number of thoughts, comments, criticisms, etc. as a result of that. When we came back, one of the things I communicated to the board was that because of the infrastructure requirements that were necessary for the regulations, that we had to come up with some alternative that allowed, as you say, the small farmer to participate in. It was through the research of Dr. Kathy Ann Brown, who was a board member and then the then Deputy Solicitor General, who determined that the AD program was a method in which we could roll out in Jamaica, which still adhered to our international obligations, but gave the small farmer the ability to grow and come into the system. So if you're asking, was there a formal survey done? No. It was anecdotal from hearing the concerns and complaints of the people who were the stakeholders. Based on that, we made a submission to Cabinet to request whether or not this could be done, and as such, we were told that it could be done in the form of 2 pilot projects to start.
But, all right, I hear, but maybe it would help all of us if this is the major initiative to sort of bring in. What's happening with those alternative development programs then? What? Yeah. Well.
Okay. Good morning, Steph. Good morning. The Alternative Development Program. So we started out. Sorry, Sophia Wellington, Ministry of Industry, and chairperson of the AD program. So we started off with these 2 pilot projects. Yes. What we've found.
When did you start?
We started in February in terms of product activities. Started rolling out in February of this year. So we would have issued 1 authorization thus far to
February of this year. But when was it? But wasn't the announcement of this made quite some time ago? When was this program actually?
It was the cabinet decision which started the program was in 2017, January of 2017.
Right. But that is nearly 2 years ago. Nearly 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just getting a time concept because,
okay. All right.
Not necessarily January of this year.
Okay. While I can't speak to the background in terms of that because I am also very recent to the ministry, what I can speak to is what we've done since March of this year but to roll out the program. So we would have had a compound town, which is one of the pilot areas, would have issued authorizations in July of this year to them. That's formal paperwork, but so they would have started planting. And in a compound, we have, so they've grown, and in August, September, they reaped about 988 plants. We are currently in the testing phase. So the tripartite agreement between the downstream buyer, the CLA, as well as a compound, allows for testing to take place in terms of the product actually grown, because remember, our main focus is medicinal cannabis. They're testing for the CBD content, the THC content, as well as microbial presence in the plant and any other contaminants that would be in the plant. So we're working with a licensed laboratory to get those results back. Those results will go to the downstream buyer, and the downstream buyer will then determine whether or not the product grown meets their standards, requirements for use, and payment and so on will flow from that. So that is where we are in terms of a compound. I would want to also say that it is a pilot project, so we are learning quite a few things as well as we roll out. The need for training, as we said, to ensure that persons are aware that what they're growing is a medicinal crop. Yes, we have tremendous experience in terms of growing ganja, but to be able to participate in the medicinal space, quality is important. Consistency of that quality is important. So it's how do we grow today, tomorrow, the day after that, to the same consistency, so that when we take it now to an export platform, that product will be able to stand up to scrutiny internationally. So that is where we recognize that we need to do a lot more training in relation to the farmers themselves, going into the community, helping them learn how to cultivate the product. I know the CLA also has gone into a compound in particular to do training in terms of inventorizing your plants and so on. So a compound has listed a few things that they think that we should be aware of and seek to try and help them to do. One of those things is infrastructure. Roads need to be paved. The farms themselves need to be secured. Dry rooms and so on. All of those things we're taking into account now to look at how best we can serve.
So as a matter of interest, do you have a subsidy? Are you giving support to them in a real way? Have you given some financial support, some technical? What has happened with them, with say a compound? Or you just said to them, grow some cannabis?
Hi, Mr. Chairman, the tripartite agreement, remember, is a program. There are certain prescriptions in the program that facilitates, under the tripartite agreement, financial support from the downstream buyer to the activity, right? The ministry, the ministry provides.
That mean, but between who?
Three.
Yeah, but I know. I'm asking who the three are.
The CLA, the growers, and whoever the downstream buyer is. All right. The ministry provides a budget to the AD program. to deal with all the technical support and the engagement and what have you.
So does any of that money hit the farmer, or is that just amongst the technical people, ministry people?
That amounts to all the engagement to make sure the operation is going how it ought to be. There's no cash that is going from the ministry to the farmer. Remember now, Mr. Chairman, that the matter of giving cash to the farmer, if we are able to move quickly to get the component that we mentioned about rather implemented, then the transition of further input support can take place.
Rather fall under you,
Yes. So that's why we indicate that as the initiative to help to support that process. But right now, the arrangement in terms of direct injection is with the downstream buyer that is providing the support to the farmers in order to.
You could just finish off and say the Orange Hill side of it too, so that the members have a full sum. And then go ahead.
Okay, so for Orange Hill, we actually did a site visit to Orange Hill in October of this year, October 8th. We looked at
That's last month.
That's last month, yeah.
After the meeting here.
This month, it's still October. This month.
Right.
It's still October.
Okay. All right.
Right. So a follow-up site visit. So there would have been a preliminary site visit that took place. We did a follow-up site visit on October 8th of this year. We looked at some non-parial land, and we're trying now to ascertain the ownership arrangements in relation to the lands that we viewed. We had some conversations with the NLA, Mr. Hayden at the NLA, and we are to actually go in to meet with him I'm going to try and plan that for next week, because there are some issues, it seems, in terms of an encumbrance, in terms of the lands that we actually viewed. So we want to be able to straighten those out, to be able to tell the Orange Hill farmers whether or not that land they'll be able to use that particular parcel of land.
All right, I'm going to go through the list.
Sorry to interject, Mr. Chairman.
I will just say to you that it has been over 9 months trying to ascertain who has control of those lands. It is the most inefficient thing I have seen in ages, that you can't find out who have control of your own government lands. Something is absolutely wrong. And this is where permanent secretary at your level, you need to pass it on to the minister, because if you do not do that, the farmers are going to be languishing out there. The world will pass us by, and we look back and say, what could have been?
Just before the questions, I mean, the whole issue with CLA is such a burning issue that so many of us have questions. I'm wondering if it is fair to the other agencies, because where I see we're going to be with them until 1 o'clock at least, and the other agencies are sitting here. I'm thinking, does it make sense for us to hold them, because there are questions that a lot of us want answered in relation to this matter.
Let's go through, because I think they're here. We may be able to.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I would want to agree with my colleague, because cannabis is not yesterday, and it has some, just as how it burns, it has some burning questions and issues and concerns that really need to put on the table and burn. So why not take the other two?
Burn the chalice.
Member Dunn?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
No, I want to hear from members. I know there were some questions we had wanted. We've never had to go that route. I'm just saying, if it is a general consensus of members that we stay with cannabis today.
Mr. Chairman, remember, it is on the parliamentary paper to be open for discussion. I would love if we get enough time to hear from them so that we can formulate our arguments in Parliament. So I wouldn't want to rush over them. So I want to to turn it around and
Yeah,
take.
but let me just say this. While we may go that route, let me just make a point. There are some issues with this that relate to the RADA, for example. One of the issues with both Accompong and Orange Hill is whether or not we can get support for the roads in there. I'm just making the point. There are issues with regard to the, which one does the agro parks? Because quite frankly, I believe that one of the directions some of these have to go is to take some of the, for example, if Agro-Invest was able to take some of these projects, it may well be a route to go as well. So I don't want us to release everything and then determine it from there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
permit me to interject. The reason we are in agreement with the fact that some of these agencies have to remain, especially as it relates to the cannabis matter, because one of the we have listed some other strategies, and one of the critical other strategy is that the Agro-Invest Corporation and the Sugar Company of Jamaica are in the process of identifying lands to make available at concessionary rates to incentivize farmers in the whole cannabis business. So, and in the particular area of focus, they are looking at lands that would be under their purview to be able to make those available too. So the matter is interconnected with respect to trying to provide greater level of support to enable this space to grow in terms of the small farmers. And Mr. Chairman, one more thing, the information that you asked for earlier, we are in possession of that information now. So if you'd want that to be shared.
We will go. All right. Members, let me make a suggestion. If we're going to go the route that you are suggesting now, we may have to redo the agenda, and if that's the case, we would have to convene next week to follow up with the ministry to allow us to go. So we will, if that is the case, the other substantial discussions, we'll take them next week. All right, and continue on afterwards. All right, but as I said, I'm wary of letting, as the permanent secretary says, let us just continue because there are issues that we have to take. They will be involved in the discussions on cannabis. Okay. All right, so Pierce?
Well, I was asking if you want the question that you had asked earlier answered, or we could have our Ms. Wellington continue with the explanation on Orange Hill. Mr. Chairman, just a significant intervention regarding the land. We know it's taking some time, but I have organized a meeting for next week in order to bring the matter of there's some issue about encumbrance that we really need to sort out, and that is what is attending to the lengthy delay. We're going to have a meeting next week to address
yes,
that.
but I make the point that some of these, look, it has been so long in just trying to find out, it is known that the land is owned by the Commissioner of Lands. The real issue you have is whether there were some encumbrances. The hemp and ganja farmers were initially told that there was an encumbrance by forestry. Forestry came down and said they had none. Then the next one came and said it was a mortgage bank. But to certain knowledge, the mortgage bank have a section that is closer to the main road, etc., because this is up in the hills. But the point I'm making, it can't be 9 months later. You're still trying to find out the condition. You have the Commissioner of Lands with offices in every parish. So I don't understand. So what's going on? And I think what's bothering all of us is that if this is an initiative that you feel has such potential, we can't sit back and just take it as it comes. It's taking far too long. And quite frankly, when you came here 3 weeks ago, we outlined all of this. And we had heard you'd go away for 3 weeks and come back. And 3 weeks later, it appears that we're no further ahead than we were 3 weeks ago. Now, if this is the case, quite frankly, we're going to have a real problem going forward. The thing is doomed. So I'm just making the point, we've got to be serious about how we're moving forward, because all these things that we're hearing, all these initiatives, they're on the ground, they don't seem to be bearing any fruit. So, Member Jackson, you know, I'm going to go through. Member Dalrymple.
Thank you very much. Chairman, there are a number of questions. The first thing I want to say is that when I heard Ms. Lightman said you had town hall meetings, for example, in the parish of Trelawney, I wonder if you had your town hall meeting in Falmouth, where there are beaches and tourism and not much lands. What happens to people who live in interior Jamaica, like up in South Trelawney? Did you have one in that area or in other areas where that is one? Two, when I'm not in here, I wear another hat. And there are several farmers, people who are operating on lands, and they have put their funds together, and they have formed companies, and they have applied for a license. Then they go through all the legal things, and they go into an attorney's office, and you're paying funds and doing what you have to do. And the attorneys still cannot put those funds in a bank. What happens to all the investment and the encouragement and all that you're saying that ordinary Jamaican farmers can, because they can't move off if the money can't go in the bank and they can't move it legally. I'd like to know where that is. And the other thing is that when all that is said and done and farmers follow what they do, because I'm sorry to say the CLA does not, when you phone the CLA, you get a recording, an automated voice, and you could sit for 3/4 of an hour. I've timed it. Yes, I have timed it, and I have spoken to operators, and you hold for 3/4 of an hour before you can get somebody. You're in a meeting, you're in this, and you can't get. Unlike the sugar holdings of Jamaica, where when you have the agricultural lands, they have an officer in the parish where you can relate to. How does the ordinary man get any information in the area from you? Because it can't be to come to town to get an appointment with you, and we just can't get the information from you on the phone. And my greatest concern is what the CEO said. He says there are restrictions in the programs that you are implementing, and therein lies the problem. What are the restrictions, and how do they affect the ordinary Jamaican farmer? I don't mean the man that has a lot of money and the large companies and so. I think the concern for most of us in here is how those restrictions, what are the restrictions? And I know I hear a lot of announcements. I'm not about to applaud about the announcements. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is what is taking place, because this discussion about cannabis has been taking place for years, and there are companies that are getting through. So it would be nice to know what are the restrictions, how many ordinary companies, farmers who get together in the country, 5, 6, 7 of them that have applied, have got their license, are they on track? Are they not on track vis-a-vis large companies that have received their licenses? It's very important because it is not reaching to them, and it certainly is not reaching to us either, because you try to get the information and it is not coming. And as the chairman rightly said, I've heard a lot of announcements, but that's what it has been for our farmers, just announcements.
Mr. Chairman, just before Ms. Lightburn respond, And the matter of the land which you presented, I just want to, Ms. Wellington, to just, the lands. Lands and farms. Lands? Ms. Wellington, go on.
Okay, so for the Orange Hill lands, so you're correct, Mr. Chairman, that the initial proposal of lands, those were seen to be encumbered, yes? When we went on October 8th, it was to look at other lands, right, connected to the same space, but we are told that those lands were unencumbered, free, available. Upon the researching, however, the lands we looked at on October 8th, they actually form part of a collateral arrangement to the JMB, the mortgage bank, in respect of a loan that was issued, right? So all of that parcel is taken up is encumbered, basically, and taken up. And just a small portion of it actually belongs to someone else. So that is where we are. But that's why we're saying we need to go in and have that discussion with NLA to really determine what is available. Is there available land nearer to? I've had the conversation with the Westmoreland group to look at maybe a little wider. Is there lands available outside of that area that we could possibly look at?
Yeah, but the problem you have with that is the time frame this is taking. I'm just saying, you're talking thousands of acres of land up there, owned by the Commissioner of Lands, and I doubt all of that land is unmortgaged to mortgage bank. What you have to do is, and this is where I'm saying, you have two ways in which you can operate: passive or active. The fact of the matter is that the farmers want to go ahead with the project. Everyone is excited. Because it has to be in the environs of Negril, because it's a geographical area, you have to find some government lands, because we're trying to engage 100 farmers at the end of the game. The fact is that the ministry can sit back and keep saying to the farmers, find some land, and then when the farmers find the land, you come and say, well, that one can't use, go find another one. There comes a time where the ministry must become active, or this program is going to go no further. That's the point I'm making. All the things we hear, and we just don't feel that it's moving. That's the truth. We do not feel this is moving.
Mr. Chairman, we accept your point, sir, and we'll get on top of it. I did indicate that...
what was it, a month ago? It was a month ago. We met with you and asked you to clear it up and come back.
The focus then was on trying to get that said piece of land, But, I mean, the investigation has revealed... But I've indicated here that the SCJH and the AIC, along with the ministry, will be pushing all efforts to find alternative lands to support the farmers.
Can we get a time frame on that?
Well, apart from the meeting next week, immediately following this, we'll have a further sit-down.
Which day next week?
Huh?
Which day next week?
Which day did you schedule? Thursday.
No, I would prefer, because, try and move it up,
No,
because, as I said,
the meeting is not for hearing.
No, I'm saying we're inviting you back next week, Wednesday. So times are getting shorter now, so, so by Wednesday, please do everything in your power. Right. We know you're a very influential man, yes. Yes.
We're going to come to that.
Number of questions.
The question on the amount of ganja on the farms, you want that one, and then Ms. Library will respond to.
Yeah.
All right. So we have 32 active sites overall, 16 of which are cultivators. For the month, would you like me to tell you the other licenses that we have operational?
No.
Just the cultivators? 16 cultivators.
So how much marijuana is being produced today?
Well, I can't say per day, but for the month of September, for instance.
Yeah, like
for the month of September,
yes.
There were 3,613 hectares of clones that are planted, 2,924 seeds that were sown, and out of that, what we were able to get was 2,664.79 kilograms. That was for the month of September.
2,000 kilograms?
2019.
Huh?
2019. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes, Member Dunn, I know. I think he wants to answer some questions. Member Dalrymple had posed some specific, we have not really heard.
All right, Mr. Lightburn will now respond to.
Madam Member, just to go through the list. You had inquired about the town hall meeting. Prior to us starting the, if you want to say, the rollout project, what we did was engaged many of the if you want to say, associations that existed around the island. So before we actually went to a particular parish, we engaged the association that was in that parish, so in order so that we were able to have the information filter down. My recollection was that the town hall meeting was held, I believe, in a building next to the courthouse or in the courthouse building, so in terms of asking for location. In reference to, you had asked about when I said restriction.
Which I might add is about 2 hours drive away in the hills from where all the farmlands are, because in Falmouth, where you had the town hall meeting, really the industry, there are beaches and tourism and hotels and all of that. Farming and cultivation and most of the things that come from rural Jamaica where there's land. So it doesn't matter, you see. My concern is that when you interface with associations, it has to have some reality and have some base as to where it is that they're planting, because they're not planting on the seaside down in Falmouth. Not much, but in the hills and so. So I am not comfortable.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I am not comfortable. I am not comfortable with the fact that nothing has happened in the rural areas. And as I said, Ms. Lightburn, I'm going to commend to you what SCJ has done, because we have agricultural lands in Trelawney, and what they do, they have an officer there that you can relate to find out what is happening, the ordinary person on the street. CLA has nothing, and I am here to tell you, the phones are not answered timely. I waited for over 3/4 of an hour listening to the music before I got an answer. And when I got an answer, the officer was in a meeting. I had to call back the next day, and I still did not get an answer. So if I can't get to you by doing that, it means the ordinary man out in the areas cannot reach you, and not everybody can afford the services of a legal office.
Mr. Allen, you have to fix the phone.
All right, Chairman. No, let me just add. Right.
I want to know what to do with the money that they bring
Let me
in.
just answer this question, and then the Chairman will speak to the banks. All right, so we are aware that there are challenges in terms of access, and over the last year, we have been trying to increase our visibility in the space. So if you go to page 25, you will see a list of activities that we have been engaged in, right? Trying to increase our presence, right? The access to information, communication, all of those things. And in recent times, just to support what the Permanent Secretary is saying about a partnership with RADA with respect to cannabis, we will be using the RADA offices to provide access to the general public. So we will develop a schedule, right, and we'll make it public, and we will advise the small farmers that we'll be at this divisional office at this particular time and at that particular day, so we can have that kind of interaction. We can provide them with the information, we can help them to complete their application forms, and any concerns and queries that they have with respect to the industry, we will be able to address it on spot.
I'm trusting that when you come back next week, you will be doing it, but that you are, because your rather people are here and our offices are functional. Because what the chairman is saying, we will be doing a lot of things, and it's time that you say we are doing it.
Well, the CLA is about action.
What about the banks and the money? I want to know what.
If I'd be given the opportunity to answer, sir.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I'm glad you raised the issue of the banking, because the truth is that it is, in my opinion, one of the major reasons why we cannot move forward in this country. The only industry, as far as I am aware, that operates without a banking system and flourishes is an illegal one. The concept that I have, to give you real-life examples, I have an individual who's building a processing facility for which the bank of the contractor won't cash the check. I have an individual who has foreign investors for which, because they can't wire the money into the country, they have to fly people in with an under amount in order to get it in. It is a real-life problem. To understand it even further, you will see in the document that there is a table. And if you notice that right now we have 238 applications that are in conditional status, which means that they have passed the fit and proper. What we're waiting for at the moment is for them to call us to say, we have built our infrastructure and we are ready for you to come. And there are 238 of them. None of them can get a bank account. None of them. The CLA couldn't get a bank account for almost a year, and we are a regulator. So with respect to...
So my question is, while you're promoting the industry, and you are saying it's growing, is it growing? Can it grow?
Sir,
can it move?
Ma'am, we are growing it within the confines that we are able to do, but the CLA does not have the ability to change the laws in the United States, which will change the correspondent banking issue so that we can go ahead and bank the industry.
So, Ms. Lightburn, my concern is, and I'm speaking from a real point of view, I don't know if you understand, that there are Jamaicans out there that are investing in this thing with the hope that it is going to move. Now, if you speak with such conviction and the fact that you can't and these things, what is really going to happen? Are they going to live to benefit from this? What is the reality that we are facing? Because we are leaving people with hopes, and I'm wondering whether their hopes are going to be ever materialized. That is my concern.
Ma'am, I don't have the ability to indicate or to advise an individual on whether or not he chooses to enter the ganja industry. What I can do is, within my power under the laws that exist, to create an environment that hopefully would allow him to operate. We have requested meetings with the Bank of Jamaica numerous times, but what I have been told, not only by the Bank of Jamaica, but by private banking institutions, is that we cannot force a bank to take an individual's money. And right now, the risk of losing their correspondent banking, they will not touch it. If there is even a whiff, to give you an example, know people who have said that they have operated agricultural companies for which, if the bank even smells that ganja is related to it, they lock down the account. As to whether or not we are giving people hope, we are trying to outfit as much as we can, but the CLA does not have the ability to fix the banking problem.
Hold on, one second. Member Dalrymple,
Mr. Chairman.
No, just Mr. Spence. I think we are in a bit of a conundrum. The reality is that everybody here knows that there's a real problem with the Corresponding Banking Act. This is going to need policy discussions. This is where Minister initiative. This is where Minister goes in, talks to his cabinet colleagues, have discussions with the Solicitor General and the Attorney General, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, because the truth of the matter is that while we are so hampered, investments in similar initiatives in Canada and Colorado are moving ahead apace, and yet we can't move. So the question is, if we're going to make it happen, again, it can either be passive or it can be active, and not just active but aggressive. What is being done? This, the CLA is saying, is the major problem we have. What's being done? What can we expect from this?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I wanted to speak to the expectation that the ministry and the industry have of the government and indeed maybe of the parliament.
Yeah.
The fact is there is a committee, parliamentary committee that has been established for the cannabis matter. And I think members, parliamentarians sit on this committee. This matter of the collaboration between the Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Justice and, you know, to deal with the whole matter, that is being discussed at that level. But from the ministry perspective and what the minister has been doing, persons would have seen that there's a strong lobbying that is being supported through Foreign Affairs. And the outcome of that lobby is that the matter of, if you look on page 22 of the document that is presented, based on the different stages that they have reached in the United States and the lobby that is taking place, supported by this ministry and the country for that matter, we are anticipating that if the trend continues in terms of the different organs of the United States government that is also pushing for these new regulations, that there might be a breakthrough. The fact is, even as we speak, Mr. Chairman, perhaps members here are even more cognizant of the challenges more than ourselves. And it is something that the minister himself is very, very vocal on. And I've had several, yes? No, he's vocal in the international space. The other day was Bloomberg carry the clear and presentation. He has gone on a number of international forum that involves the U.S. members of Congress, and the lobbying is very active. We cannot be passive on this, and I would say that with the support of the Parliament and support of members here, you know, if there is advice that we can get as to how any other initiative apart from those that we are executing can be made, we will be so happy to.
Yes, we appreciate what the minister has done, and we have heard of his lobbying, and that is so. But you know, you mentioned that Ms. Lightburn said there are handicaps because you have large companies who can't do, so they have to bring in. As members of this committee, we are representatives of the people of Jamaica in our constituencies. So they are putting together, my concern is that they're putting together these little funds that they have, and they're tying it up in something, because some of them have got together in groups, formed companies, and moving forward. And all I'm saying to you, and that is our concern now, as we're looking at how taxpayers' monies are being spent, and we are also looking about how the monies of our ordinary people in the constituencies are being spent. The reality is, and they're tying up their funds there, and they have not moved forward with this thing for quite a while, and that is a concern I have.
Member Dunn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. This question is specifically to Ms. Lightburn. There are two acts that governs drugs and pharmacy in Jamaica: the Pharmacy Act and the Dangerous Drug Act. The Dangerous Drug Act was amended to allow for the CLA to come into being. Question is, before that, the pharmacist is a principal authority on drugs. Question is there a pharmacist on the board of CLA?
Currently, no, sir. There's not a pharmacist on the board of CLA. But there is a doctor on the board of the CLA. The CMO sits on it.
The question was, is there a pharmacist, not a doctor, pharmacist?
No, a pharmacist is not.
Do you think a pharmacist should be on that board?
The chief medical officer represents that community.
No, and I respectfully disagree, because a pharmacist is a principal authority on drugs.
Sir, but part of what, if you look at the way in which the board of the CLA is constructed, it is mandated by statute as to representatives from various areas. And so the representative from the ministry, the appointee from the Ministry of Health is the CMO. So if a pharmacist in particular was appointed for that purpose, meaning pharmacology, the statute would have to be changed in order to accommodate that.
For CBDs, right? CBDs are APIs. APIs are active pharmaceutical products, right? For an assessment to be done by CLA for products to be licensed, wouldn't it be appropriate for a pharmacist to have been on that board?
Sir, the CLA does not assess licenses, products to be licensed. That remit is within the Ministry of Health, because it is a preparation.
Yes, that is in fact true. But what I'm saying is that once a discussion on drugs any at all to be had, then it is only appropriate, with the distinguished records that pharmacists have in this country and pharmacists have in this country, and the purview of medications generally, do you believe in hindsight that a pharmacist should have been on that board? The second question is, there are over 430 pharmacies in Jamaica, physical location. Do you think that, again with their record, do you think they should be exempt from license by the CLA to retail products?
Sir, the statute requires that the CLA tracks the product ultimately from its beginning to destination. So every destination it goes to, the CLA has to have record of it. If you have a group of group of entities who the CLA doesn't know about, then the CLA is not tracking it appropriately as required.
No, that's fine enough. I'm just saying, you now will go through a process of licensing, whether it's herb shops or any place for retail. My question is, pharmacy with the record that they have, should they be exempted? The tracking is fine because you have to track. But instead of going through the route of relicensing entities, wouldn't it be appropriate to include pharmacists in this?
Sir?
I am hard pressed to respond. I think it's a matter that we should discuss with the medical, Ministry of Health, and since they are an umbrella, the pharmacists would fall within that as a policy position. Yes, that is something that I think, as a recommendation we could review.
One more.
With that ministry to see if that recommendation,
No, member Dunn.
Sorry, Chairman.
No, just on the point you're making. If on page 7, it says on page 7 that the ministry intends to reconstitute a national cannabis advisory council by December 2019, which will be charged with developing the roadmap, and says membership of the council will be drawn from industry groups, including the Bureau of Standards, Ministry of Health and Wellness, and Ministry of Justice. I don't know if that helps, or if you're talking specifically to the...
Once it includes a pharmacist. The other
but
thing
what I would suggest...
revision of the Dangerous Drug Act as far as the CLA is concerned?
But before honorable members, good afternoon. Sheldon Reed, legal officer at the Cannabis Licensing Authority. So, as you would be aware, honorable member, Jamaica has ratified single conventions that speak to our legislative framework, the medical cannabis framework. One such convention requires that if it is that a party to the convention is going to be treating with cannabis, it must be ensuring that the cannabis is regulated through the issuing of licenses, authorizations, and permits to all parties. So to answer the specific question that you've asked, Honorable Member, we couldn't exempt anybody from any entity from getting a license or a permit or an authorization to handle the cannabis. And this is part of what the INCB requires as its reporting that Jamaica must abide by.
All right, I have Member Campbell Stewart. I'll have to reinstitute you. That seems to be a regular feeling for you, but I will disabuse you of it.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not even sure who I should direct this particular question to, but let me just throw it out to the CLA. In terms of the business model to facilitate the small farmers, is there an agreed and developed model which you can say put to a potential farmer? And let me focus solely on the small farmer. Is there a model which you can say, well, here, Mr. X, you're from Negril, or you're from in Sligoville or James Mountain or wherever? Is there such a model that he can come and pick up? And because you're telling us using rather sophisticated language, if I may say, downstream and all of that means googly gook, you know. I mean, he doesn't understand all the downstream buy and all that. He wants this model that he can look at, sitting out in the sticks, and he can take it, and he'll be able to make the correspondence with the section of your entity, and he can go about his business. Is there such a model?
Well, the ministry and the CLA, we have developed a model, which not really developed a model. We are contemplating adopting an existing model, which is the mother farm concept, right? Which uses the mother farm concept, where you have a principal farmer or a principal licensee.
Yeah, I take all of that. The fact is, you do not have one.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
So that, do I understand you?
But
the
regulations allow.
I take the answer which you gave. I take the answer which you gave. You do not yet have the model developed to facilitate him. And let me just go a little further.
But there's something that exists currently. The cooperative model and the friendly society model. So the law allows for that, and Regulations 32 also allows for the small farmer to get waivers and deferment of fees and set up payment plans. So there are facilities in place for that.
That regime is in place.
That regime is currently in place. It's in the regulations.
The small farmer,
yes,
from the Negril, wherever he's from,
yes,
he has access to that.
Yes, sir.
He can come online, or he can come to your place of work, and he
can download the regulations, and it's there.
Right, and it's in such a simple format that Mas Joe from down on Negril,
yes, sir,
he can pick it up, and he doesn't have to rely on very sophisticated language.
It's on page 18, sir, in your document.
Fine. Let me just go straight to where I want to go. I have a little concern with all of that. I hear you're pursuing a particular line that what you want is regulated cannabis, and you want a particular strain which is rid of the THC content. Is that where we're going?
And that is why we are going to be aggressively going out in this space, because there's a lot of misinformation or no information in this space. Because persons, because of this void, the absence of the CLA, are misrepresenting the objectives of the CLA.
What do you mean by that?
Do you contemplate the indigenous strain?
Sir.
of ganja, let me just call it what it is, that which is indigenous to Jamaica, born and grow here,
Sir.
right, remaining in its purest form, and the small farmer being able to come into the trading space with that.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
yes sir. We don't contemplate. We don't dictate for cannabis. We don't dictate the strains that are grown. As long as you meet the regulatory requirements, which is over 1% THC, you can grow your strains. If it's for hemp, over 1% THC is considered to be cannabis. The law says that. Ganja.
Yes.
For hemp, it is below 1% THC. What we do though, we dictate the level of CBD, right, that you are growing for hemp. It has to be above 10% because we consider anything below that to be industrial hemp. And the policy is that we are not allowing the growth, the cultivation of industrial hemp, because the cultivation practices significantly differ from those of ganja, and they pose a significant, that kind of arrangement poses a significant threat to ganja cultivation. So there's a lot of technicalities and science that goes in our position.
Right, and this is where I want to go. How are you bringing the kind of clarity out in the...
So we are revamping our communication strategy because we need to do more, and we accept that. We need to do more, and we are going to go out in the space, and it's a part of expanding the organization structure. When I joined the organization, there were only 11 people there. We are 1.5 years into the organization, we have 50. Right? So we have different skill sets. We have scientists on board. We have lawyers on board. Because the industry demands different skill sets. So we are aware of it. We are building the space. We are evolving as the space evolves. There are challenges. There's no perfect regime. We have identified these issues and we're moving forward.
All right, let me ask. At the outset, did you contemplate, and when I say you, I mean the collective,
yes.
you, that the small farmer would have been a participant in...
Always. Well, the chairman will respond to that.
Before, sorry, just to get something in, to bring in Rada for a second. No, I'm not, but there is, in all of this, we've heard of the technical discussion and support. Is that support from cannabis, or Mr. Thompson, you have some good, are you in the weed growing business now? Have you got your specialists on board for cannabis and have some technical officers, or is it that the CLA is doing that?
Well, the CLA is supposed to be doing that.
So they're supposed to have the technical...
provide the support for us to start the operations out there in terms of capacity building for farmers.
Okay, but so far you have not really...
No.
You're still focusing on coffee and... No. And other. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Blackburn.
When the regulations first came into effect,
yes,
the purpose of finding out what people's concerns were, that was the reason that the roadshow was held. And that is the reason that, but you have to understand that in the setting of the regulations, there has to be a balance. The balance is between incorporating the Jamaican population and also ensuring that the international standards to which we are held to are that we continue to comply with them. So when the regulations came into effect, you had situations such as, I talked about the infrastructure, fencing, things of that nature, which are necessary in order to ensure that you don't have diversion, etc. But then when you go into the space, the Joe, as you call him, doesn't have the money to go ahead and put the infrastructure into place. It was because of that that the AD program was born. Because there has to be some methodology of always tracking the plant, or else we are in problems with regard to our international obligations. So what we are trying to do is this delicate balance between the two. There's no roadmap for this. And so we're not always going to get it right, but the reason the 80 program came in was to see if we could ensure that those who would never be able to put in the infrastructure, that there was an opportunity for them. So, do I have a perfect answer to that? No. But is there the intent to get there? Yes.
I take your point, but I'm concerned that with our attempt to meet all the obligations because let me tell you a very practical difficulty that we face. There was a certain time in our history when our coconuts were bad and poisonous, and because of international obligations which we had, we just caved in, and we gave in to what they said, and we killed our coconuts. And we may very well be doing the same thing with coffee. What are the precautions we're taking in order to preserve the integrity of what we had before the Europeans and the North Americans came?
Sorry. In terms of preserving the integrity, when we started, and I went around in the town halls, one of the main things that I would hear from people is ultimately, that I know how to grow ganja very well, and people are coming in, investors, and one of the things I pointed out to them is that they have an enormous amount of traditional knowledge, for which there is an intellectual property right on that. The problem is that the CLA cannot be the initiator, I believe by law, as what Jaipo would indicate, cannot be the initiator in doing that. The same thing with the function of a geographical indicator, such as we have for coffee. It has to be an industry-driven process. And I would always say to people, please, when these investors roll up and you know how to grow ganja, please do not tell them all of your tricks. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a contract signed, you are never going to get anything from it. It is imperative that the associations in this country take the people who are in this space and foster them also an environment that protects that which they have learned and experimented for over the years. So unfortunately, for us as a regulator, there's only so much that is within our power to do, but do we go ahead and consistently urge the other parties to ensure that, get the research that's meant for a geographical indicator? Please, I brought Jaipo to them so that Mrs. Bellamy could go ahead and explain to them what the value of traditional knowledge is. It is preserving those things that have to come from the industry that also help to protect Joe. It's not only us.
Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I would want the Chairman to share the sentiments being expressed by Member Dalrymple Filbert there. As relates to the education program and the sensitization that were held in East Parish, my farmers in South Manchester, they did not hear about those meetings. And I would propose that going forward, that we go into the deep rural communities. The members of RAD who are here can speak adequately to the fact that South Manchester has some of the best farmlands. And the farmers, they have been prodding me and asking me to get the stakeholders to get in there to have some stakeholder meetings with them, rather than having it in the commercial areas in Mandeville and other areas. So I would love to see that going forward. For the PS, I see where the license for processing fee is at $41,000. When you look at the FLA charges
41,000. What kind of dollars?
Yes, $500. No, Jamaican. It's 300 Jamaican dollars for the processing fee. And I'm saying that for the FLA, $15,000, which is a more deadly use if you're going to be looking at a gun. Why are there considerations being given to reduce the fees for the processing for those small farmers there? And secondly, in some jurisdiction, PS, there is what is referred to as social equity programs, where persons who have been convicted that they are brought into the mainstream by having those records expunged. We have had a number of our persons, as you would have heard before by other speakers, who have borne the brunt and paid the penalties and suffering, and yet still, based on the laws that the regulations, they are excluded. What is being done to bring these people into the mainstream so they can be part of this lucrative industry which is being proposed?
Thank you very much for the question. You know, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a general statement before I proceed with the two specific questions. And the chairman of the CLA mentioned that we indeed need to do more. One of the things that RADA is very good at is converting technical matter into simple step-by-step process with basic, simple, easy to follow language. Convert those into collateral material that can be made available to guide, apart from the public education, just supporting material that will guide small farmers into understanding. And I'm saying that is something that we'll take to our department that deals with the preparation of this material to see how much of that we can assist in converting. Specific to the question asked in terms of the whole matter of the cost of fees, for the small man out there and for the individuals and such, we indicate that there is a policy in place that supports the waiver of fees as long as they meet the requirements of the CLA. If you refer to page 18 on the CLA's initiative, there's one there that is called Waiver or Deferment of Fees Program, and it clearly explains how that can be approached. Similarly, on page, can't find the page now, but earlier we explained that the expungement of records is also an opportunity that we need to make more public so that persons can become fully aware to take advantage of that situation. So on page 6, point 7, the matter of how that can be handled is explained. Persons with previous criminal records for possession, that the records can be expunged and they are allowed to participate in the space. And we went further with respect to the AD program to explain that within the context of that collective, the matter of previous convictions and so would have been taken care of in the structure that is created to regulate that space, and therefore that is not something that would prevent persons within that collective from participating.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Pierce Spencer, Ms. Sam Lightburn, since the small farmers are now encouraged and find it difficult to obtain a license, is there anything in place to stop the trading with the licensed farmers and to stop the trading with the licensed farmers? The trading. I know they will be tempted for the small farmers and to trade with the licensed farmers. Is there anything in place to stop that?
Is there anything to stop
anything in place to stop the trading between
illicit ganja growers
and the
illicit
licensed farmers?
Licensed farmers. Right. Well, the risk is that they lose their license if they do so, and we find out. If an unlicensed, that is, PS referred before to a closed loop system. The reason you have to have that is that every person who you trade with in that loop has to be licensed. If any individual who is outside of that loop trades with you, you risk running your license, losing your license because it is a breach of the terms and conditions. And so what we do is the ongoing monitoring and enforcement to ensure that you do not operate outside of that closed loop is how we ensure that the loop remains closed. I don't know if I answered your question correctly.
Just a couple of things I want a clarification on. I'll pick up with the question that was raised by my colleague from St. James earlier on and the response regarding the support to farmers. And perhaps the ones, Chairman, that you are concerned about, the local, small farmers in these communities. Now, you indicate that the support and the focus of CLA is for producing cannabis for the international market.
The focus of the CLA is to regulate regulate cannabis in a legal space.
In a legal
so whether
space.
it's sold in the local market or the international music market,
let me pose the question a different way. There are interested cannabis farmers who want to grow cannabis legally and sell it locally. They don't have any international business interests. They are those that Mr. Clark spoke of earlier on. They want to produce what they have been doing for so many years, not illegal anymore, but legal now. Is the CLA providing support for them, either directly or in collaboration with, say, RADA, to grow their crops, their ganja, right? In a legalized way.
If I understand your question, if you are if an individual wants to become a licensed ganja farmer,
yes,
he can sell his ganja locally, and that occurs right now, as you would notice many of the herb houses that are around the country.
No. I know where you're going. No, I'm not going for those.
Okay.
The little man over in where he's speaking from, in Westmoreland or where.
Do we assist? Is that what you're...
He wants to grow a square of ganja, but he wants to grow it legally. He wants a license to grow a square or half an acre of ganja legally. That's all is in his head. Can the CLA, in the licensing regime existing, can he obtain a license? Is the licensing requirement in place for him to grow his ganja, get a license to grow his ganja in Westmoreland and be able to sell it where he wish to sell it, which invariably is locally?
If he passes the fit and proper and gets a license, what we have done is we have facilitated linking people who are cultivators, licensed cultivators, with end buyers. So whether it's a
He doesn't, with all respect, he's not interested in that. I am speaking from the perspective of how I understand many of those. Yes, they have been illegal growers for years. Now that they hear that growing marijuana is legal, they want to become legal.
Sir.
And all they want to do is, can you make me legal?
No, Sir Jackson.
Sorry.
I am asking it how they are thinking it, not how I know it is. Because otherwise, if you don't answer the question how he's thinking it in his mind, you're not addressing his concern. And we'll be talking here, and he's here frustrated, dissatisfied, and claim that you're not helping him. And the only person who you are helping is the big man who is preparing for the export. And that's where the disconnect is. So the language has to be precise and it has to be direct. Can the CLA facilitate those persons? And if it can't, you say to them, there is no space in the licensing regime for you. You are out, you are going to remain out. It is not a very attractive political speak. So agency might not want to say it, but that's the reality.
Mr. Member Jackson, your summary is the fact. That point that you made last, that that cannot be allowed at this time, is a fact. But the flip side is also true. If there is an opportunity and there is a hope and there is a pathway towards the opportunity that is presented, then we would want to sell that to Mass Joe too, whoever that individual is. It is illegal as we speak to grow quarter acre and to do what you want to do with it. And the regulation that and the international convention still does not permit that scenario where an individual can just grow off acre and do what they want to do with it. It's
One
not
of the
possible.
most definitive outcome of this exchange is that those small farmers have no space for legalizing their activities.
That's not true.
Hold on. Okay, let me rephrase it then. I'm going back to those little man with the half a acre court.
Sorry, saying that's not true. It wouldn't be accurate. Let me...
No, you're splitting hairs now, Mr. Huh?
It wouldn't be accurate.
It would be accurate.
It would not be accurate.
It would not be accurate.
Yeah, because there is
But
a
it will be
mechanism
correct.
to facilitate. So, it's not that it's not true. It just wouldn't be accurate.
After all, Mr. Spence, sometimes we have very long and eloquent exchanges, but we don't answer the question that is asked and need to be answered. And at the end of that eloquent exchange, the man is as ignorant and as lost as he was before. Our job is to bring him over that, let him understand clearly what is or what is not. It might not be too palatable, but it's a fact. And what I learned in my political journey is that when you're frank with people and direct, even if they don't like it, they'll appreciate it, and then they'll take the pathway that is available to take them where they want to go. These small farmers, from all that I've heard, the support for small farmers, I don't think those have a space. They don't. And that's why this year, next year, if everything is on the same level, they'll remain frustrated. So that is settled. The other question I have, you mentioned in your opening remarks, Mr. Spence, about the chairman asked a question about whether the CLA is a regulatory, licensed regulatory entity or it's a developmental entity. In other words, it's part of its terms of reference is to facilitate the development of the cannabis industry. You as I recall correctly, is that the ministry apparently plays that role in collaboration with the CLA. But does the CLA has the capacity to do that which of the developmental side of it, or it is just, I seem to be straddling different areas at the same time, regulatory, licensing, developmental. When you say if you're all things to all persons, you become nothing to none. And my fear is that you stand at risk. So, one, if it is tasked for so doing, does it have the capacity to do those things, at least at this stage? It's particularly the question that the chairman had asked, the developmental. Because when you're going through the early stages, that's more challenging stages, and you need an extensive array of support, technical competencies and so forth to move it forward. And I'm fearful that we might be committing ourselves to a lot of things that we are not able to do in a satisfactory or effective way. And lastly, you mentioned about the import-export arrangement. Yes, I'm aware there are elements of the cannabis growing business that you have to import for development of your farm, and then there's the export, which is a greater part of the large commercial side of it. Where are you now in that, establishing that regime for the export, import protocols and so on that any potential investor can plug into? Is it a 1 year horizon? Is it a 6 month horizon? What really? We hear about these things, and as the chairman mentioned, you hear these announcements about these things being done, but what has been done and whether there's any timeline for it to be done, it just hang in the air. So clarify those three things for me, please.
All right, let me answer the matter of the second question as it relates to the capacity. The fact is, in my opening remarks, I made it very clear that the CLA is regulatory and the ministry is responsible for driving development. Attendant to that, the chairman mentioned at some point the establishment of this, council, if you will. The consultants that supported the government in the early stages had made recommendation for a number of things that should help to frame the industry. I mean, the CLA is one such. I dare say that apart from the policy framework and those other recommendations, there are some other things that need to come to fruition. The CLA is just building out its capacity. I mean, the CEO and chairman made mention of the movement in staff, and that requires resources, which we all know is limited, but is being supported in a phased way over time. So they do not have the capacity, and it is not their direct remit to deal with development of the sector. They are currently building out to treat with what they are to treat with, and that in itself is quite a challenge and substantial demand. The ministry is now moving actively to reconstitute and to lead the process of development, because what attends to facilitation of the industry development by the CLA regulation need further support to take it forward. Hence the discussions and the mention of the agencies now in terms of the SCJH, the AIC, and RADA, and that particular council that is going to be in place to craft in a national way the combined set of activities and strategies and partnership that is needed further for build-out. For example, the ministry itself has limitation in terms of how it is able to move forward, because it has to liaise strongly with the Ministry of Health and the Justice Ministry. And there are different players and different. So there's the Parliament or the Cabinet, whichever. There's this parliamentary group or ministerial group that is supposed to be attending to some of the matters that relate to the industry too. And we have to also appear in front of the Economic Growth Council to speak to some of these things. The fact is, we are structuring and trying to pull out all the stops and trying to put the framework in place to assist in the development of the industry and to facilitate its growth within the constraints that we have in terms of resources, both human and financial, and being cognizant of the legislative requirements and framework and the challenges that we have to meander within the context of the regulations too by the Ministry of Health.
Yeah. I mean, I just took a quick glance at this updated report, yes, and listening to you and all that has taken place before, discussion before. And what really strikes me is that we set up the regulator self, but then we seem to be trying to catch up in how to manage the overall research and development. This is where now the ministry come in as a backup for the regulator. Because too often we see, and I use like the Transport Authority, you're a regulator, but then you come to start doing enforcement, you start doing training and this, when your responsibility is really to regulate the industry. Yeah? And I think the ministry itself has to take that leadership role in dealing with the other aspects, while the regulator try to even just to master what it is that we've given them the responsibility to, because this is new. I know some members so like they come down hard on you, and it is new because you're learning as you go along. But the ministry itself, I have to say to your peers, have to take a more leadership role in expanding the other parts of the industry while they still try to find their footing in regulating and growing the industry.
You know, because just listening to you a while ago, it sounds like we're trying to catch up. And what is happening is that while we are slow out of the blocks, it is getting away from us a little bit. Yeah? And I would urge the ministry, yeah, if it is the parliament, if it is that we have to get a subcommittee of the parliament to see how best we move, yeah, at a faster rate in getting the thing together. I think we need to start, the ministry itself needs to take that grab at it, and not just the minister going out there and marketing and how we get this, but we're not only the small farmers, but I'm seeing here where the authority on page 10 looking at the regulations for the import and export. But the longer it takes is the longer it hurts us also. Research and development, we keep on talking about how critical it is. And I mean, I've heard persons who in the research and development saying, boy, they have to register their thing overseas when we could be benefiting from it. How is it that we can get that regulation, get all the blocks lined up in one, to get them to do it here and register it here with JIPO, so that we can benefit from it? Yeah? That is what I want to hear when you come here. How are we putting the blocks in one line, in getting it, and not giving too much to the CLA to do while they're still even trying to get their footing together in regulating an industry that we should be masters at this stage. No, we should be. At this stage, we've been talking about it a long time. But as I said, take charge, right? Huh?
All right. All right, quickly.
I was about the export import protocol.
Let me just remember.
Yes. You speak to the issue of the granting of waivers and so on to the small farmers in relation to their fees and so on. But what consideration you have in relation to the infrastructural arrangement? Because some of these persons might not be able to, as small farmers, to deal with some of the infrastructural arrangement like fencing, lighting, cameras, and all those kind of stuff. What consideration is given to those farmers?
Our best attempt at addressing that problem, that challenge, is the transitional licensing type that we are proposing, that we are working on. And what it seeks to do, well, it's a traditional permit. What it seems to do is it allows that particular farmer not necessarily to build out his arrangement, his structure, his permit to the full extent of that of a cultivator's license, right? So he would not necessarily be required to have a storage facility, a drying facility, and other facilities that go along with a cultivator's license. So it actually shortens the cycle, and it shortens the stages, and it gives him a better opportunity to build out his cultivation site so he can focus really on cultivating and harvesting. So he wouldn't, and getting a downstream buyer. So he would not necessarily need to go and dry and store and cure and have it there for any protracted period. So the cost to build out the remainder of the facility would be negated.
Okay.
So he would be authorized to possibly just grow, right, and harvest, sell, or he could be involved in the preparation of just genetics. He would just, a nursery arrangement that he would just grow different strains and sell, right? So it would significantly reduce the infrastructural cost to build out his arrangement.
Okay.
But well, basically that's
what kind of arrangement do you have with in terms of the police and so on in all of this? Because one of the concerns...
We have an existing MOU with the police, so they provide us with assistance depending on the nature of the operations.
So you will put in all those conditions.
We would what?
Those conditions would be in the hands of the police in terms of the differentiation between those who would have had the infrastructure and those who wouldn't.
Yes, we provide the police force with updates, right? So as soon as we grant a license or we grant a permit, then that information is provided to the police.
Okay.
And the Jamaica Defense Force.
Right, because
and they also provide other forms of assistance in terms of our due diligence processes. So when you submit your application, then they provide us with information in terms of your fit and proper status. So we have an ongoing relationship with the security forces.
Okay, because there are sometimes when the local police just go on operation and then buck up something and then cut it down.
Well, that's not for the authority.
Yes.
Okay.
We are dealing with a regulated space.
Okay, that has always been the concern of some of the small farmers.
All right, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
In terms of those regulations, they're actually at an advanced stage. We actually have a draft regulations. We've been doing consultations, and now we have sent drafting instructions for it to be finalized. This is through the Ministry of Justice. We have to consult with them because that's the portfolio that has to issue the regulations. But we have done significant work. We're expecting it before the end of the financial year, as long as Ministry of Justice signs off as well.
So at the end of that exercise, with those regulations, what will it enable?
Sir Jackson, it is anticipated that it will enable license holders as well as persons of ganja, as well as currently authorization holders for the cultivation of hemp to export, to import, to transit and transship ganja and hemp for medical, scientific and therapeutic purposes. Scientific and therapeutic purposes. Yes, sir.
In the absence of those regulations, you have any interim provision to facilitate such activity like export?
Yes, sir.
You do? So there's an interim arrangement?
There's an interim arrangement, yes,
okay.
sir.
Members, in closing, there's a few points. We all come back. I think this issue comes back to how are we going to ensure that this industry will, among others, incorporate small farmers and farmers who are already in Jamaica doing this. It's part of your policy. The regulations that are here, a lot of them, when you go through the regulations, we're looking through at all the things they need. The perimeter fencing, the types of doors are specifically said, that you can use, the windows and glazed panels, the access control, electronic surveillance, how many cameras, the pixels of the cameras you need to be monitoring this sort of thing. Quite frankly, a lot of small farmers are going to be, this is real difficult. So if it is going to work, there has to be some initiative that starts. So what I see happening in this discussion is that you're having a discussion about these alternative development areas. It's a start. You're taking some areas that you feel may be conducive to it as pilot projects. But then there needs to be an aggressive push to make these projects successful. If your pilot projects are not successful, then what does that say for everything else? To do that, we have to assist them with the basic infrastructure, and to really work with these groups to try and make them successful. And I want us to ensure that we're pushing ahead with it. Amongst the things that we need to look at is, and taking out what Member Dalrymple said, I think if you get these pilot projects, you really want to do these things across the country in different areas where you are almost, and that's where the agri-parks come in. because that sort of arrangement could work. And so, but there has to be a vision about what you want to achieve. Also, when you look again at all these regulations, it's not just a technical assistance, but some assistance can be given to actually get these up and running, which will act as a catalyst for the others. Now, I mean, I'm just saying to the Cannabis Licensing Authority, I'm not even going to the extent to which the ministry and RADA have their own budgets, but your budget is 271 million. There must be something put aside, not just to have these organizations, but to actually the persons who are really wanting to be successful. Nothing because the discussion we're having, I do not know that they have really benefited. And I think that if we're going to start it, there must be some assistance given to them. RADA is here. I think it's important. I think it was mentioned when you discussed Akampong, and I know that the same thing happened in Westmoreland when they were looking initially at the land. It is a no-brainer to go to RADA and say, well, look, this road, let's assist with that. That one you have, 700 million 1 year, billion another year, big road programs to put in a small process. Yes, but I'm just saying, if that has more to do with process. They're not. Chairman, 1 second. Let me just. They're not only under fire, but they're under friendly fire.
just before you close, Chairman, could I just ask that the.
Hold on. Let me just finish.
I know you're doing it somewhere, and it's in part of what I'm asking you to do, is to request the position paper from the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and whatever is it, that long name, in relation to the incorporation of the small farmers into the ganja industry. That, I think, will assist those of us on this side who don't fully understand what it is that they're doing, we could.
But I think the real, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. What I want to see, and I'm sure everyone in here, is to actually see something successful happening somewhere. I mean, I'm hearing all the examples. Westmoreland has a name, a strong brand. I'm still looking for that example in Westmoreland where any farmer is benefiting from Westmoreland. So it's a start, and certain other parishes here have the same concern. The second thing I would say, members, the initial work that was done in 2015 with the legislation, we dealt with the medicinal, religious, primarily. Am I correct? What was decriminalized? Right, religious and sacramental and medicinal. I'm just saying, the recommendation, I don't know all the legal aspects, but I'm wondering at what point we're going to be moving ahead to determine and now catch up with the rest of the world that is looking at the recreational, because although it was allowed well, the problem you have with that is that even though recreation is under the rubric of therapeutic, the problem is you still need a prescription. And so why it's a problem is that for all the cases we're doing in this closed loop, that end retail has to be therapeutic or sacramental. So your problem is that you're limiting the sort of production that you really want, because you're saying to persons, if you're caught with under 2 ounces, I think it was, or some amount, that it is not a criminal offense, but at the same time, how does someone get that within the context? I'm throwing this out that at some stage it is something that we need to look at, whether this is a point. So what I would suggest, next week we're going to invite back the ministry. We're going to deal fundamentally, and I apologize to those agencies that Raja, SCJ, etc., that were here, although they were able to add their small part to the conversation. But what I would like us to look at is when you come back on Wednesday, let us know more about the alternative development plans, because what we want, what we need to push for, is for these to be successful, and then we can look at, because the ministry must have a rollout plan for something, because with due respect, what I'm hearing from members Whitton, Dalrymple and Stewart, etc., I don't really hear it from member Jackson. But the fact of the matter is that they would like to see what is happening to farmers in their areas, whether there's going to be a possibility for them going forward. We have to have some broad vision, rather than just building up a structure to regulate and do these things. What is the vision to make this thing a success? Because quite frankly, I'm telling you, there is a frustration building up amongst farmers across the island, saying that there's really no place for them in this structure. And as government, we have a duty to make the opportunity for them. So over to you, Mr. Spence. Next week, Wednesday, we will meet again and follow up on the discussions. All right.
I wanted to, the basis of this alternative, what's the name of the program? ADP program. I have a difficulty with how it is conceptualized. To have town hall meetings, to come up with develop some prototype and some, what's it called, pilot project, without having a sense of what the population of these illegal farmers are. I believe, personally, frankly speaking, it's just ill-conceived. If you are going to invest in a pilot program, you must have a sense of what the population size that you are going to be catering for. Suppose when you develop these pilot program, it's only about 6 or 10 such farmers you have in Jamaica. You will spend all of that money to deal with pilot program for 10 kind of illegal farmers. So it comes back to the question which you asked originally. What is the number of ganja farmers in Jamaica? And for the government to pursue a program like this without properly informing itself with empirical data, can get it from the police, you can get it from we know to go in the community and get information and find out. So it informs a decision and an investment in our program. You know, a couple of town hall meetings in hotel, in tourism centers and things like that about people who do farming in the rural parts of Jamaica. I can't fathom how that was arrived at.
All right. Okay, members, on that note, Mr. Spence?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I just wondered, with even the last comment from Member Jackson, if we do not need a little more time before we reappear.
Well,
we have other
issues. Obviously, we have other issues. We need to finish off the ministry.
You spoke to the cannabis matter, Chairman, and to that's what you.
Intention, no, let me just say. Okay. No, let me be clear. We don't intend to bring back Celia at the next meeting. Okay. We'll do the others. But what I will say to you is that we would want you to let us know, because we need to move apace. As I said, the big problem we have in us is not today. This problem come up, and time, it looks like once, it's almost like out of sight, out of mind. So we're just going to keep it very much
not
in mind.
Not at all, Mr. Chairman.
We're keeping it very much in mind.
we take, Mr. Chairman, the ministry takes its appearance before the PAAC very seriously, We when we come to the PAAC and we exit the door, there's another conversation that is had, you know. And we appear on national television with more questions coming in.
Please, let me just say something. If you find that you're getting nowhere with whether it is the Commissioner of Land or any of the others in getting the information you need to do your job, you tell us, and we will invite them here to explain to us why. The fact of the matter is that we are going to get to the bottom of it.
Mr. Chair, since CLA is not coming back, in the report, it alluded to questions that came up in the last meeting. So since I raised it, I will just comment. The issue about the rental, and I see a lot of epistles in here from land agency justifying, saying in effect that the rates are market value. That was not my point, as to whether or not it's market level or not, but whether or not it was prudent for the CLA to be spending that amount of money on office space rather than alternate location where they can save and money. So, so I just wanted to make that note. And the matter I raised about an inquiry and one, I've got a letter from an officer of the CLA that I will withdraw that one about the.
Can I? So, Mr. Chairman,
there's a changing of the guard.
Oh, okay. All right. So, to continue my summary, so to be clear, then next week is really not the matters of the CLA that will be addressed, but it is the other agencies, rather AIC and SCJH. So we are coming back with. That's fine, because it gives us some time to go and do some of the work that needs to be done.
Well, the other point, huh? I thought you did all of that before the last sitting.
No, I mean continue work. I mean you make mention of a census, some kind of notion as to the thing. Right. So we are going to be backpedaling and doing some of that work. We're going to ask rather, because they have a good way of reaching out. If the farmers do not feel that it is something that they need to hide, then and we talk to local people there to let them know that we're just trying to get the data to be able to assist better. So we will try to get that kind of information in place. Overall, Mr. Chairman, we wish to thank the committee members for allowing us to provide as much clarity as we can. Some of the initiatives that we mentioned require further work, and the document that was asked for, I'm understanding that we need two documents which can be rolled into one. One is the explanation as it relates to some kind of support for small farmers and how we bring them in the space. That's one. The other one is a clear vision or direction for the space. I did mention that while we do that, and an underpinning activity that we deem very critical, because again, as is recognized, the capacity, while we have the will to execute in terms of the ministry, we have to also build our capacity to handle this new area. And so that team that was recommended here, and it came out of the overall development recommendation for the sector, is to be established. We're hoping that we can get some technical expertise and capacity and representation, as was raised by another member, into that committee to be able to provide that overall direction in which we need to go. And so with that, we just want to thank you for allowing us to be here, and we will appear as you so require. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir. So say that this meeting is now adjourned. Okay. Yes, by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Jackson, and third by Member Stewart.